Do 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 do.
Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of SimplyPodLogical, a simply logical podcast.
Hello, everyone. It's Taco Tuesday again.
Okay, Christine, what are we doing today?
Today we are looking at the law, specifically the Canadian law. Your Honor.
We're going to read you your rights.
Yes, your Canadian rights as a Canadian. You are all hereby declared Canadian by virtue of watching this broadcast. It's Canadian content confirmed.
Yeah, okay, so we were streaming the other night. We were playing Fall Guys with people, asking people for podcast suggestions, and someone suggested we read, like, weird, absurd Canadian laws or things that are still laws, but no one knows they're laws. You know how you'll hear, like, funny anecdotes or examples of things like this.
Yeah, and
Right.
I think people were suggesting, like, read weird laws, like, anywhere in the world, but as I was doing research, I realized, like, there's just so many weird laws everywhere, and so much is so dependent on, you know, the region itself. So I was like, I kind of feel weird reading random laws from, like, Illinois, where I have, like, absolutely zero context. But with that said, we're just doing weird, quote, weird, whatever, you know, you want to define that as, laws in Canada. But we are not legal experts. We are just doing this for entertainment purposes. I did, however, do some research on some of the ones that we found from, like, curated content
Christine
style
likes
websites.
just reading the Canadian criminal code for fun.
I just read it at night. But yeah, this podcast is for entertainment. Please do not take legal advice away from it.
It's not legal advice. Yeah, and okay, so here's the first. I've got a website, Reader's Digest Canada, that has an article about 13 strange Canadian laws you've never heard of. Thought it would be a good way of just, like, getting us into, like, the kind of things we're talking about.
And that's kind of a reputable source in Canada.
Reader's Digest?
I
don't
thought
know.
so.
Isn't Reader's Digest kind of like TV Guide?
You know what? I don't really know. I just remember growing up with it, and it was just like, oh, it's Reader's Digest.
Sounds authoritative.
Yeah.
Like, they probably aren't just making this up.
Yeah.
Do you wanna just start with that?
Sure.
All right, first one. You'd be surprised to learn in Toronto that in order to sell edible underwear in an adult entertainment store, you still need a food license, Christine.
In order to sell edible underwear specifically, or just edible anything, you need a food license.
Yeah, this doesn't seem all that strange.
This doesn't seem weird at all. Like, in order to sell something that you eat, you need a food license. If it happens to be underwear, you also need a food license. Like,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, maybe that's a bad example. That's just in the intro of the article.
Good job, Reader's Digest.
All right, here's something better. It's illegal to whistle in Petrolia, Ontario. That sounds like a made-up space. I don't think Menchie likes that.
Menchie got spooked. She's going to put me in jail now.
So a Petrolia city rep says this unusual law aims to limit excessive noise between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., but according to Article 3, 772.3.6 on the town's website, yelling, shouting, hooting, whistling, or singing is prohibited at all times.
Interesting. I mean, because it's a bylaw, it's probably, you know, enacted or enforced at very discretionarily.
Sparingly, yeah.
So it's probably like a combination of all of those where they would go after you. Not if you whistled once would be my guess. But technically, it does say any of those things as an option, so it could be just whistling.
Yeah, but this is a good example of, like, your municipal laws, if they are enforced, can have, like, way more impact on your life than a lot of higher levels of government sometimes.
Well, it'd be much harder for, like, the federal government to pass something that said that.
I want a federal law banning all whistling.
Yeah.
We should just talk about noise complaints in general. Like, you lived in apartments and with students and stuff like that. Were you ever on the receiving side, or did you ever find yourself having to make complaints to bylaw about people making excessive noise, like neighbors or people in your apartment building?
I'm pretty sure that,
That you
bylaw
got
was
noise
called
complaints?
on our house, probably,
Yeah.
But, like, I don't really remember, because I don't remember anyone ever visiting us for that reason. I just remember people saying the neighbors called bylaw, but, like, I don't know why. Or, I mean, I can guess why, but I don't have evidence as to, like, you know, an actual municipal officer coming to the door and speaking to me personally.
I know it's, like, a thing in Ottawa for sure, because we have 2 universities in town.
Yeah.
And one of them is right downtown. So, like, a lot of the residences and campus of University of Ottawa is in the middle of a pretty residential. There's a lot of residential housing, just, like, in between student housing. So I think it's a very common thing for people in those neighborhoods to be calling by law. But it's one of those situations where like I don't think people are ever happy with how those things are enforced. The truth is your neighbors can be
dicks.
pretty terrible.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot you could do about it unless you're like making records of recording like their actual noise levels in some sort of machine and like incessantly calling by law.
Yeah, and it was always really annoying once I grew out of being an annoying student and I was a less annoying like grad student and I lived in the condo. I'd hear stuff from down the hall all the time. People would be out having parties at like 3 a.m. And although some of that was technically against like condo board regulations, you know, the people who would enforce that aren't around at that time, so they don't care. You're supposed to report it to bylaw if they're not around. And then by the time you wake up and like report it to bylaw, you're like, and by the time they respond, if they respond, maybe those people have like, you know, packed it in for the night anyways. So
I'm going to run for mayor. I'm going to be the mayor of Ottawa. And then I'm going to figure out how to criminalize all noise. Everyone in Ottawa just...
like that movie.
Shh. No
What
noise.
was that movie called?
Silence.
Okay, Ben. This is your world. Good Lord.
Here's another one. According to the Importation of Intoxicating Liquors Act, you can only legally move a bottle of booze from one province to another with the permission of the provincial liquor control board.
What?
So this actually changed in 2012, but was a law until pretty recently. So it was changed, allowing you to legally move wine, but little else. So have you ever heard this before? Because in Ottawa here, we're very close to the border with Quebec. People drive over to Quebec all the time to go to cottages.
Yeah, so it's the equivalent to driving over state lines.
Yeah, so this is like, yeah, you're right. It's like saying you can't take a case of beer over state lines. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, I actually don't know enough about these.
I've heard about this before, but it's one of those things where I don't think anyone really cares. Like, if you have a case of beer and you're driving to your cottage in Quebec.
Is the language specific to like an individual or is like commercial purposes, like transporting? Because it's taxed by the province. So I imagine like that kind of makes sense to me. Like each province, like Ontario has LCBO and it's taxed, so they have to regulate it. But like,
well, maybe they want the revenue from,
yeah.
Well, because alcohol is sold by these provincial bodies.
And they probably track it. They probably track the production and sale of it. So if commercially, another province was bringing over a bunch, I can imagine that would fuck with their counts and systems.
But I guess
if an individual is like, I'm bringing over a case of beer.
That's illegal.
Is it? Like, is that ever enforced?
I think it's technically.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be a reason for you to get pulled over. Like if I'm driving over to Hull or I'm driving to Chelsea or Val-de-Mont.
I mean, like, people definitely did this when we were in university.
Yeah. So I think you need to have been pulled over for a different reason. But then you could get in trouble for having alcohol in the car.
I do not recall if I ever brought alcohol over the border from Ottawa to Gatineau, which is like right across the river, 10 minutes drive. I do not recall if I ever did that.
You do not recall. Okay. Here's another one. It's illegal to attach a siren to your bike in Sudbury, Ontario. Since 1973, the only noise-makers cyclists can attach to their bikes are bells and horns.
Who has a siren on their
Who needs
bike?
a siren on your bike? A siren? An asshole.
Imagine, like, they had to make that law because someone was fucking annoying.
Oh, it's fucking Rick again, just driving around
like,
town
thinks
with
he's
a
police
siren.
officer or something. But it's like, no, that's your bike, sir.
This is another thing. If I was king for a day.
Okay.
People who... Yeah. Okay. Actually, here's a fun question that sort of deviates from this. I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh, no.
If you could make your own strange law that you could enforce on other people, what would it be?
I mean, no one can be as beautiful as Menchie.
Okay. For me, are you ever out in... You never leave the house. When you're out in public, sometimes there'll just be somebody with like a speaker or they've got like headphones turned out. And whatever shitty music they're listening to, they want everyone around them to hear the same thing they are. I cannot believe the lack of self-awareness of people like that. So I think people like that should be arrested.
What should the penalty be? Think proportional to the offense, Ben. What's the penalty? They get subjected to music that you like
Yeah, for like 48 hours straight.
for
Just pumped into
an
their
equivalent
brain.
amount of time that you
Pretty
were
sure that's legally
subjected
torture.
to. No, it has to be proportional to the crime.
They're
So-
not allowed to listen to music they like anymore.
So they got to listen to Beethoven or classical music for the same amount of time that you were subjected to whatever music you didn't like.
What's wrong with Beethoven?
What if you pass? I'm just picking something random. I'm just assuming. What if you pass by them and it just so happens that the music they're listening to is something you like?
Still, they don't get to decide that everyone on the
But-
bus
but
has to
it's-
listen to whatever they like.
It doesn't harm you. You actually enjoy it. So you enjoy the crime being committed. What then?
Well,
Do you-
some
do you report
crimes
it?
are enjoyable, Christine.
Yeah, that is true. Crime of passion. Okay, King
Okay,
Ben.
never mind. Another one. It's illegal to skinny dip in Bancroft, Ontario.
In a specific lake or area?
Well, Bancroft. That's a town.
Does that whole
City,
town?
I guess.
I mean, I remember, yeah, like it is illegal in some places because it's like a family beach or something. So they don't want nudity. So that kind of might make sense, like, in the context.
But like, if nobody's around,
well, it's a,
what's wrong with getting naked and going for a
yeah,
swim?
but then that's just an argument for like a victimless crime.
If someone gets naked in the forest and there's no child around to be exposed to indecent acts, is it a crime?
I mean, yeah, well, in that case, you could get naked in a forest and that would not be a crime. But if they've made it specifically a bylaw, you can't get naked in the water at a specific beach, it's probably because, I'm just guessing. I'm giving this law the benefit of the doubt, but like maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm guessing there could be a reasonable explanation. And it could be that it's like a family beach. So that would kind of make sense.
Yeah, that would make sense. All right, another, you can't pay with too much change. While it won't make you a lawbreaker, according to Canada's Currency Act, there are limits to the number of coins you can use in a transaction. So I'd have to look up the act. It actually doesn't say here.
Does it say what the limit is? Like how much you can pay in coins?
If it's nickels, vendors can say no to any purchases over $5. The limit with loonies, a $1 coin, is $25.
Mr. Beast can't pay in coins. For
Has he
one of
done
his
videos like
yeah,
that?
he's definitely done like a million pennies or like something like that.
You know what's weird? Like people, it's like barely any people like handle cash anymore.
Yeah.
So this is pretty foreign, the idea. But I can definitely remember like 10, 15 years ago, sometimes being at a store and being behind someone who was like counting small pieces of change.
Every penny.
And I'm like, I get it's like maybe some people are like homeless and like that they only have cash, but like I'm not saying that, right? Like sometimes you'd be at a grocery store and there'd be some old lady in a purse trying to count the exact change and taking forever to do it.
Yeah.
It's not really something people experience anymore.
It's not really that I had a problem with. I just remember on occasion, like you'd have someone who's a complete smartass who'd collected like for years, like a decade even, every quarter or nickel they ever got, and then they'd roll them up. But a cash person at a till, like what the fuck are they going to do with all those? Because a lot of retail establishments back when cash was like more normal, they didn't have room for all of those in the like little spots for, just think of like the nickels, the dimes. Were you ever a cashier? Like you had
No.
like this much room for like every dime and this much room for all the nickels. So if someone comes in with like stacks and stacks of nickels and the rolls, you're like, I don't have room for this in my till. So there's a certain point where it's unreasonable. And also if it's not counted, you're forcing the cashier to count.
Well, yeah, because
And
even
like
in
that's
those
not
rolls,
fair.
you can't trust that
Yeah,
those
you can't
rolls are
trust
correct,
that those,
right?
So the cashier should be counting it regardless of whether it's packaged or not.
Well, I didn't know anyone tried that. For those rolls, for me, was always just a way of counting your own change and then you take it to a bank.
Yeah, but I remember as a cashier when I worked at Shoppers, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to a coworker. Someone came in with like all those stacks,
Like
and the
rolls
cashier
of
was like, "I
nickels.
still have to count it." And then also, I don't have room in my till, so they had to call the supervisor. Like it's just if
See,
you
this law isn't strange at all. This is a good law.
yeah, it's annoying for like retail services and the people working there. But the bank, I think, has to accept your money. And so if you have a bunch of nickels and dimes and rolls, that's fine because you've collected it over years. That's fine. But take it to the bank and exchange it for a $20 bill. Or just put it in your account.
There's some like famous story that's escaping me right now about someone who was like in a legal dispute with someone who was like forced to pay.
And they
And
paid
I think
in
they
pennies.
like showed up with like a wheelbarrow full of nickels or something and just dumped it on their place and left.
Yeah, maybe this law came from that.
Maybe.
But they don't even have pennies anymore in Canada.
That is true.
A while back. There's no pennies.
Yeah. Do you miss it?
No.
I don't.
I'm just thinking that. That's crazy. We once had pennies. Could you get anything for a cent? No.
Okay, here's the first real weird one. Taxi drivers can't wear a T-shirt in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So according to Halifax's regional municipality bylaws for taxis and limousines, Statute 42A stipulates drivers must wear shoes and socks, keep their attire in neat and tidy condition at all times, and absolutely cannot wear a T-shirt.
So what are they supposed to wear? Does it dictate
I
appropriate
think this is like
attire?
a really antiquated idea that like cab drivers
Must wear a suit?
have to wear like a proper
Can't wear a
formal
t-shirt.
attire.
Like how was this repealed? Do you know? Or I guess
I hope
it's
so.
it's city. That's so weird. You can't wear a t-shirt. What if your t-shirt's like really nice though?
I think I found a loophole.
What? Wear a tank top.
They can't wear a T-shirt. Maybe they can wear no shirt at all.
Yeah.
Free the nipple.
Does it say anything about being shirtless?
I don't have the law.
It just says not a shirt. Yeah, okay. I'm like, what is the exact wording? And how do we
Well, okay, let's get to a few more. Then we'll get to yours,
get
where
to
you
my exact?
actually
I have exact wordings,
Yeah.
guys.
Okay, so just a few more. It's illegal. It was illegal for non-dark soft drinks to contain caffeine.
Non-dark soft.
So I've
like
heard this
Mountain
before.
Dew,
There,
right?
there have been like regulations about how much caffeine is in pop or soda, and yeah, the idea that it's the dark ones like Coca-Cola and Pepsi were allowed to have a certain amount of caffeine, but the
light ones
clear or
weren't?
light ones were only allowed to have a little bit or less or
Is
something
that because just the perception that we think the lighter ones are caffeine free? I mean, they could just clearly mark has caffeine in it.
like that. Yeah.
That seems.
I feel
it's
this kind of
weird.
went out the window too as soon as all these like crazy fucking energy drinks that kill
Mm-hmm.
people came out.
And what happens if it's like purple or red? Is that light? Is that dark? I don't know.
Man, I can't. Did you ever go through a phase where you were drinking like Red Bull or
No. The only time I drank Red Bull was as a Jaeger bomb. Do you remember those?
Yes.
Yeah, where you mix, you put a shot of Jägermeister
You drop it
and
into
you drop
a
it
glass
in a
of Red Bull.
glass of Red Bull, and then you.
You're
shoot
right.
the whole
I
thing
did this
back.
too.
Yeah,
This is probably
Jaeger
the only
bombs.
time I ever drank Red Bull.
So disgusting.
Yeah, it was disgusting.
I hated Red
and got
Bull.
people fucking wired too, right?
Yeah, and it was so like dangerous and stupid. Just thinking back, do not do what I did. But yeah, that's my only experience with Red Bull.
Okay. Here, let's find one more. It's okay. The way Canadian law is currently stands, everyone commits an offense who B makes, prints, publishes, distributes, sells, or has in their possession for the purpose of publication, distribution, or circulation a crime comic, Christine.
A crime comic?
So I've heard of this before. This is a really old law. I'm not sure if it's been repealed since, but the way it's written implies that any comic book depicting crimes being committed.
Isn't that like every comic
technically
story
illegal.
ever?
Yeah, basically.
Is it if you author it in Canada and don't get like permission? Like I'm confused.
No,
like,
so
who
I
who
think,
can be arrested?
I think what this comes from is like people wringing their hands about like violence in comics in like the 40s or something. I think there was like some famous cases of the same way people now blame like video games for kids being violent. I think there was a period in time where people thought the same thing about violent comics. Mm-hmm. So I think, yeah, I'm almost certain there was like a high profile case that led to this law being passed. Again, another example, like even if this is still on the books anywhere in some context, it's clearly
never
not enforced at all.
Otherwise, like Marvel would be in jail.
Are
DC
you
would
Marvel?
be in jail.
Marvel or DC would be in
I
trouble.
can't remember which. I looked at it the other day on stream, but like a lot of people would be in jail.
That was really so. What was the conclusion? So Christine asked her chat on her stream if they were
Marvel
more fans of
or
Marvel
DC?
or DC comics.
It was like 70-something% Marvel.
So most people are Marvel, and Marvel's
Yeah.
clearly more popular.
But isn't Batman DC?
So this is what got
Yeah.
interesting. I think a lot of people agree that the best superhero movies are still the Batman movies, both the newest one, which is excellent, and also the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy.
They should just have a merger.
Have a yeah.
Mergers and acquisitions of Marvel and DC. Let's go. The
I
Ultimate
could see
Universe.
that. Well, there's all sorts of weird like legal stuff about who owns the rights
Exactly.
to what.
Merge them.
Well, Spider-Man was a weird example for a while because like Sony had the rights, but then I guess Disney owns the Marvel.
And it was always illegal to have Spider-Man commit crime.
Well, that's why like the newest Spider-Man movie literally like creates a scenario with multiple universes just so that they can bring like the Spider-Men of different franchises into a single movie. Yes. This is very interesting. Okay, Cristine. Do I have one more? Do I have one more? Keep your kids home. In St. Paul, Alberta, anyone 15 or younger cannot loiter in a public place between midnight and 6 a.m.
Midnight and 6.
Isn't this like a police discretion thing? If you're on patrol and you see like a child
you'd probably
alone at night, you do something anyway
and send them home. Yeah.
All right, Reader's Digest. Disappointed with your list. Let's see if Cristine did a better job.
Okay, my list was derived from similar random websites, kind of like BuzzFeed style curated, not from BuzzFeed, but like, you know what I mean? These websites here, the 10 weirdest laws in Canada, and they're all kind of sensationalized. But I found I couldn't help myself but like actually look up the criminal code because it's not always the same way the headline describes, and a lot of them have been repealed, which means they're no longer in effect. So a lot of the ones I have are repealed, but I think it's still interesting.
Tell us anyway.
Okay, so it's illegal to scare the Queen, as in the Queen of England, in Canada. It's illegal to scare her.
Oh, can I scare her somewhere else?
It's outside of our jurisdiction if it's not in Canada.
Oh, what if we're in international waters and I put on a spooky mask and jump out of the bushes?
I suppose. I mean, unless there's like some international treaty law or I don't know.
So how is the law written?
So according to the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 49, it's called Acts Intended to Alarm Her Majesty or Break Public Peace. Everyone, this is like literally the language, which I feel is much better than from a random website. Everyone who willfully, in the presence of Her Majesty, A, does an act with intent to alarm Her Majesty or to break the public peace, or B, does an act that is intended or is likely to cause bodily harm, fair enough, to Her Majesty, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years. So it's the first section A, like, does an act with intent to alarm Her Majesty. Intent to alarm.
So it needs to be intent here.
Yeah, and alarming is different than scaring, like the headline article said.
Well, alarm is a lower threshold than scare, isn't it?
Scare? I don't know. Alarm? I guess this is kind of up to interpretation.
I could be alarmed at how many nachos you ate at one sitting.
No, Ben, that's not a reasonable interpretation.
Alarm is so subjective.
Alarm means to put, I'm just guessing. I don't have the definition of alarm in front of me, but I'm assuming in this context of the criminal code, it's like to put her on alert that something could be wrong. Like her life she's alarmed. You know what I mean?
The Queen is alarmed.
She ran out of tea.
You would wear that shirt with those pants.
The Queen is alarmed. Your nails are hollow and rainbows.
Yeah.
The Queen is alarmed. She's running out of tea.
So do you have the punishment there?
Yeah. An indictable offense liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 14 years.
14?
Thank God for maximum penalties.
For startling the Queen.
Okay, this was repealed in 2018.
That's very recent.
Yeah. There was a lot of these like weird laws in Canada.
I would love to know if anyone was ever charged.
Yeah, I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find much.
Well, we could talk to someone back at CCJ. Look through the UCR records.
Yeah, you know what's funny is a lot of these ones, if they're criminal code, like we could have hypothetically looked them up at work.
Yeah. Not that we should do
Not
that
that
for
we
fun.
would ever do that for entertainment purposes, but that is the job of a crime statistics analyst, technically, to go through criminal code offenses by year.
Sure,
including the ones where there's n equals 0. It's still like an offense list.
Yeah, those ones also often got grouped up into categories of like other or whatnot.
Yeah, so even through our work, I don't remember off the top of my head any like weird laws, because if there was any weird one, it would have been like grouped up into like other.
Yeah.
You know, so we never actually looked that granular detail because it wasn't important for like crime trends storytelling.
Yeah, I love that one. That's great.
Yeah, if you were ever convicted of this offense, Section 49, before 2018, please comment down below. I'm really curious what you did to alarm the Queen.
They might still be imprisoned. 14-year punishment for that.
Like, just because there's a maximum offense penalty guideline there does not mean that happened. There is no minimum specified, though, so I don't know.
It would probably be like a YouTuber TikTok prank.
Scared her?
I scared the Queen for a viral video.
Well, that would be putting out evidence. They'd be so dumb to like make a video.
Idiots record their own crimes all the time.
It's so true.
Yeah. throw that person in jail.
That's why you always say, I do not recall.
You need to go to content court.
Okay.
All right, that was great, Christine. You have another?
Yes, I have many more.
Okay.
It's illegal to challenge someone to a duel or to accept an invitation to a duel in Canada under the Criminal Code of Canada. And I will define...
That doesn't seem too strange to me.
Yeah, because this is obviously from like old ancient laws written in the early 1900s where duels were like two people were like, draw your sword, where that was like actually maybe more of a thing. I don't think like people do that now. Now they just call it fighting or whatever. Now it's just physical assault.
Now we just call it UFC.
No.
MMA.
No, but it read, everyone who A, challenges or attempts by any means to provoke another person to fight a duel, like specifically to fight a duel. B, attempts to provoke a person to challenge another person to fight a duel, so it's just like another person to fight it, is guilty of an indictable offense and liable to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 2 years. Okay, so scaring the queen is far worse.
Yes, agree.
This was also repealed in 2018. But it's crazy that like these really specific laws, there was a whole bunch of them that were repealed in 2018. I don't even like, I'd have to look. There was probably some big wave of crimes that were outdated. They were just like, get rid of all of these all at once. Parliament, sit down. We're doing all of these on the chopping block.
Yeah.
But still all these websites will cite laws that were all like repealed in 2018.
Sure.
So
this one seems pretty normal to me, but I know in the States, there are some states where there are mutual consent laws, I think they're called.
to fighting.
Where, yeah, if you have two consenting adults who agree that they want to physically fight each other.
What if one dies?
That's a good question. But I think, like, there was a guy, where was this? Like, Washington State? Or Portland? There was a guy named, I think his name was Phoenix Jones. He would dress up as, like, a fucking superhero.
And challenge people to a duel?
And he was like a trained fighter. And yeah, I think he would get into fights with like random drunk idiots. But like, even if the police were there, if the police witnessed these two people agree to fight, I think the police would just let them fight. I think there was like some weird thing going on with that.
That's so weird. I don't like...
You're not
laws.
a fan of
I'm
that?
not a fan of that at all. I don't care if you guys agree. Unless you like have lawyers sign a waiver that says you're okay with dying and there's no way to contest it, which is like highly unlikely for that to like ever actually work. I don't think you should be able to fight because there's always that risk.
It's pretty scary. I don't think a lot of people just don't realize just like getting into a fist fight could easily kill somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just in movies you see people punching each other repeatedly over and over again, like it's no
Like
big
nothing
deal.
happens and they
Or
heal.
these fucking
They just have a
Marvel
bruise.
movies where people are just destroying each other. But yeah, in a fight, if you hit your head on the
Yeah.
sidewalk, you could just die.
What if you get brain damage, or what if you're paralyzed and then you sue the guy and it's like, well, you agreed. Are you going to accept that as a defense that you agreed? No, you're not. If
Well, I
you're
think
paralyzed
legally,
after.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know what I'm
Anyways,
talking about.
we don't know
but-
what we're talking about. I don't like that if that exists.
Okay.
Anyways, in Canada, you cannot challenge someone to a duel.
Okay, keep it coming. Give me another one.
Okay, this one's not that interesting, but it was funny for like 2 seconds. Okay,
yeah?
you can't paint a ladder in Alberta, specifically Alberta, one of the provinces out west.
I can't paint a ladder.
You cannot paint a ladder. This is according to the Occupational Health and Safety Code of Alberta from 2009. There's a prohibition on painting. Section 126.1, a person must not paint a wooden ladder. 126.2, a wooden ladder may be preserved with a transparent protective coating. I like how they,
They had
said
to-
what you can't do, and then they're like, here's what you can do, because we know you're like, what the fuck?
They needed it. It's probably like an amendment.
Yeah, I read elsewhere on the internet that this was because you can't see the quality or the wear and tear on a ladder if it's covered in paint. So like if it's eroding, like if the wood has gotten wet or something and it's weak and it's a risk for safety, you could hypothetically cover that up by just painting it white and you wouldn't see the signs of wood distress.
Okay.
So that's, I think, like the real
Okay.
reason
I can
for
get
it.
on board with
You can
that.
get on board? Yeah. Like, first of all, do you need to paint that ladder? Like,
I
probably
just don't
not.
think you see wooden ladders anymore.
Yeah, good point. Where's the last time you saw a wooden ladder like that?
Yeah.
All I remember is metal ladders.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Why don't they just make wooden ladders illegal? That'd be just easier.
Criminalize wooden ladders, yeah. And climbing trees. But if you criminalize
Yeah.
a wooden ladder, would that also criminalize climbing a tree? Is a tree a ladder?
No, I don't think you should reasonably conclude that a tree is a ladder. You
I
should
don't
not
know.
climb a tree. If you do so at your own
See what
risk.
the Supreme Court has to say about this.
Jesus Christ. Okay, next one. This one's fun. It is illegal to pretend to practice witchcraft in Canada.
Oh, but I can actually practice witchcraft. That's okay? I just can't pretend.
Not specified.
Okay, what? So
So
read the
under
law.
the Criminal Code of Canada. Wait, what's the equivalent of the Criminal Code of Canada in the States? I'm blanking. Just for reference.
It's not quite this. There are federal laws.
Yeah, but what's it called? I feel like I should know this.
I don't think it's
They don't
the
have
same. I
one?
don't think there's like one criminal
Does
law.
the state, it's like the United States Bureau of Justice, is that it? Do they have like a set federal law for that applies cross country? Or is it no, it's only by state? Obviously there's state laws, I know that. But is there also like an overarching
No, I
criminal
think
code?
it's way more.
way more
There's
state-based?
way more in the States, yeah.
I
Or to
should know
individual
this
states.
answer, but like I just never look at state stuff. I just know that your crime stats are fucked because they're all state based.
Okay, just
And
got-
they're all have different definitions. Okay, but in Canada, the criminal code applies to the entire country of Canada, just to be clear. So under Section 365 of pretending to practice witchcraft, etc.
etc.
Yeah,
that's doing a lot of work
that's what
in
it
that
says.
sentence.
Everyone who fraudulently,
Okay.
A, pretends to exercise or to use any kind of witchcraft, sorcery, enchantment, or conjuration. B, undertakes for a consideration to tell fortunes.
I like that.
Or C, pretends from his, only applies to men apparently, skill in his skill in or knowledge of an occult or crafty science to discover where or in what manner anything that is supposed to have been stolen or lost may be found.
Oh, I think I'm picking up on what this is actually about.
Is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. So that's like not as serious.
So is this really a way of just criminalizing like absolute awful people who pretend they like have supernatural powers to help people like find their kidnapped loved ones and things like that?
I think so. And I think that's my reading of it because it's about fraudulently pretends to
Have
engage in
magical
witchcraft,
powers.
undertakes for a consideration, meaning like for a monetary gain to tell fortunes, or pretends from their skill, or it says his, so, but like
Yeah.
that was the language. A crafty science to discover where
Crafty
anything can be stolen or lost or whatever. It's a very like minor punishable offense, but yeah, it's not illegal to practice witchcraft, as I often see in these like articles, like, oh, the crazy laws in Canada. It's the pretending to practice, and I really think that for a consideration is kind of the key words in here too.
This is pretty terribly written though if it is about like defrauding people by pretending to have
Yeah.
supernatural
Well,
abilities.
there's probably like a whole other section on fraud in a different act that's not the, well, maybe it's under the criminal code.
It would
but
be
like,
under the, yeah.
yeah, but
Because
this,
the way this is written, like a bunch of kids on Halloween are going to be juvenile offenders for, pretending they're witches in to receive candy or something. You know what I mean?
yeah, maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah, I mean, like, you could read it in that way, as long as they're not taking money, but it's an or, so they could just be pretending from their skill to discover where something might have been lost or found. So if they just say that to the neighbor, I know where your dead dog is.
The little girl goes, I'm going to cast a spell on you unless you give me candy. The consideration is the candy.
Maybe. But they don't have to go to jail, though, because there's no, it's just summary conviction.
Oh,
So
okay.
they'll be fine.
So just, what's the fine? I'll
It
give all your
doesn't
candy
say,
back.
but I feel like in this case it would be way more discretionary. Usually that's what summary convictions are. But this was in fact repealed also in 2018 with a whole bunch of other.
Okay,
slew of
all
offenses.
you fraudulent witches out there can relax.
You can go. You can
You can what?
you can sorcerize. That's not a word.
Sorcerize. Okay.
Okay, another one.
Another one.
This one is not repealed. This is currently still
On the
the
books.
case.
Okay.
It is illegal to scare a child to death in Canada.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, it's the way that
Okay, you told me this one already.
yeah, I already told you this one. But like you laugh when you hear that because you're like, what? Like you can't scare them.
Does it need to be that specific? Couldn't it just be like it's legal to kill a child, obviously? Like, what is
Like,
the...
yeah, obviously. But there was some specificity. So this is under the definition of, or the penalties of homicide.
Yeah.
It's under homicide, section 222. It says a person commits homicide when directly or indirectly by any means why does the language still say
I think
he?
it always just uses he pronouns in the criminal code.
They
Yeah.
gotta update that.
Well, there's way more men committing crimes than women.
Totally true, though. You're
Yeah.
right. It's all men. Okay. He causes the death of a human being. And then section 5, way lower, says a person commits culpable homicide when he causes the death of a human being, A, by means of an unlawful act, okay, B, by criminal negligence, so
Yeah.
like you weren't looking out for what you were doing, C, by causing that human being by threats or fear of violence, or by deception to do anything that causes his death, or D, by willfully frightening that human being in the case of a child or a sick person. So it's specific to a child or a sick person that if you frighten them and inadvertently, directly or indirectly, cause their death, then that would count as a homicide. I mean, in some ways, I think where this is coming from is like if you scare an old person so bad
they have a heart
that you
attack.
give them a heart attack, then you're liable for homicide.
That kind of makes sense to me.
Does it?
And there
though?
should be a reasonable expectation of if you're terrifying a very frail elderly
I think
person.
intent. Well, I mean, intent will always matter under homicide.
Yeah, yeah.
Mens rea. But that can totally change the context for me as to like whether I consider that reasonable to be convicted of homicide.
Do you want to give people a little criminology lesson? Actus reus, mens rea? You just mentioned it, but I don't
Mens
think people
rea.
will know
It
what you're
just means
talking.
like the motivation.
Yeah, usually for someone to be culpable of a crime, there's sort of this like idea or principle in English-based Western justice systems.
Is it Latin technically?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know,
So
but the words
actus
are
rea,
Latin.
like you've committed a criminal act, but you also had mens rea. You had the intention of committing that act.
Yeah.
Is that the way of putting it?
I think like motivation is technically the word, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, I actually don't remember. This was like from like first year law class, but you're right. I just remember the words, but I probably couldn't give you the perfect definition.
But this
today.
is the basis upon which people who are like sort of not criminally responsible due to like mental health issues or conditions or like schizophrenia or something sometimes are found not
Yeah.
criminally responsible because it's the courts can't establish that they really had the intention of committing the act, even if it's very clear they committed the act.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really weird ethical gray area that a lot of people take issue with, actually.
Yeah, but a lot of people take issue with it when it represents such a minority of case outcomes.
Good point.
So that's also like something that bothers people who work in the field, where like the public will blow up one case where someone got an NCRMD result, not criminally responsible on account of mental disorder.
Yeah.
And then it's like that literally happens like 0.001 or whatever it is % of the time, and it's incredibly specific. And then there's a bunch of cases that don't get that verdict, where if you actually read the case, you'd be like, they should have gotten that verdict. So there's a little bit
Maybe.
of like moral panic over the use of it. That's what I remember
I
from
mean, there
learning
are
in school.
real world high profile examples of it where someone who, if they had been found actually criminally responsible, would be in jail for 30 years. Whereas if they're found non-NCR, they're kind of back on the street after a panel of doctors think they're safe to return to the community, though, right?
I think it's very nuanced and
Sure.
case
Yeah,
dependent. Yeah, I just feel like the conversation ultimately leads to people wanting to just abolish NCRMD verdicts because they think like no one should get that kind of chance. And I think that kind of logic is pretty misguided because it deliberately wants to exclude outliers when the whole point is that you need something to accommodate the outliers. But anyways,
Yeah, we
that's just
also
my
don't
thought.
want to stigmatize people with mental health as,
No,
as if
that-
this is
that's
happening
not
all the
it.
time. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's incredibly rare for
Yeah.
that verdict to even happen. Okay, so don't scare children to death. Do not scare the child.
Okay. All right. Do you have another
It's
one?
interesting. You can't scare a child
Or the
the
queen.
queen.
Or sick old people.
But wait, you can scare a child, but not if they die. But you can't scare the queen. Doesn't matter if she dies. Interesting. I mean, okay, that one was repealed, but like back in 2018.
Okay, so do you have one more? You have one more?
I have two more.
Okay.
Okay. This one's like maybe not that interesting,
Oh, good.
but I just think it's interesting
Okay,
because I
tell us
just like
anyway.
happened upon it. So it's no longer legal for blinds manufacturers, like blinds as in like what go in your windows,
Yeah.
to make them with drawstring cords or those little metal ball cords.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like new in Canada. In 2019, the act was passed, but it takes a while, obviously, for manufacturers, and they have like a grace period, to enforce it because they have to like make all new fucking blinds now. But
Yeah. So this is, I'm somewhat aware of this.
Yeah.
This is because kids would get tangled up in the blinds and die, right?
yeah, so in Health Canada's rationale for this, they wrote, over the past 9 years, Health Canada is aware of 9 fatalities in Canada for an average fatality rate of 1.0 child fatalities per year. So 1 kid a year in the last 9 years. They are saying that the death was due to a cord as a blind.
From a window
from a
covering,
blind.
roller
And,
shades.
and
of blind.
specifically, I think they mean like look around your house. It's like probably easier if you just like look at your blinds and be like, do I have this?
Is it
Because
like the
a lot
metal
of
beads
a lot
or-
of homes, especially like homes made more than 5 years ago, have blinds that have like either little metal balls on the side that you pull to like
Yeah.
make the
Or
roller
just
go
the
up and
pull
down,
cords, right?
or the cords where it's like a string and it kind of it does a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's incredibly common in people's houses, right? But it's not. I read later because I'm like, wait, is it actually illegal to own blinds? That like, because that'd be crazy.
Yeah,
'Cause,
do you
like
have to-
everyone fucking owns blinds. No, they specifically wrote like they didn't want to put that burden on all Canadians to have to
So it's like
replace.
grandfathered in. So
Well-
like manufacturers have to change how they make them more than people have to
Yes.
replace them.
Yeah, because that would be crazy to ask every Canadian to like change all your blinds, especially if like you don't. What if you don't have kids?
If you have young kids though, I'd think
Exactly,
about this.
of course. So they issued like a warning and a notice so that parents could be aware. I don't know if anyone knows this, but like, by the way, if you live in Canada, these are the rules, and you may choose to replace your blinds because they're pointing out this risk if you have young kids.
Yeah.
So like, you should change it if you see it as a risk in your household. But if you don't, or you don't have the funds, you don't have to change it. But the next time you go to buy blinds in Canada, manufacturers have changed the types of blinds they make. They've discontinued a ton of blinds, and you can have some cords on some blinds, but there's
You
very
really did your research
I
here.
did, but they have this is absolutely so boring, but I
Going
love
into
it.
Such detail.
But you can have some cords, but they can only be like 22 centimeters in length, and if there's 2 cords, they can only equal a total of like 40 something centimeters, and they have to be raised at a certain height so that like a child couldn't reasonably reach it. But you know what that means for a lot of people who are used to very long drawstring cords, is that all the new blinds that you go and buy these days, like you have to grab it from the bottom, like this, and pull the whole thing down, which seems so unnatural to people who've grown up with like normal blinds where you just pull the cord on the side.
A lot of blinds suck though, the way those pull cords. Did you ever have like shitty blinds with
Yeah.
you have to like pull them out at an angle
Yeah.
and that dropped it? Yeah.
Those are definitely illegal now.
So I would have thought that, after a few people died, enough people would have just sued the manufacturers and they would have just had that incentive to change. I'm surprised it took the actual passage
Canada.
of laws.
Yeah. And so manufacturers can continue to sell blinds that have some cord, but they have to put like a warning on a big sticker on it. And it has to say, strangulation hazard, young children can be strangled by cords. Immediately remove this product if a cord longer than 22 centimeters or a loop exceeding 44 centimeters around becomes accessible.
I think we get the idea.
Okay.
We're getting really specific on these.
I just think it's interesting.
All
The
right.
more you know, Ben.
There
Like,
you go. I learned something
Okay.
today. You had one more, right?
I had one more, and it's about something very Canadian. Maple syrup.
Okay.
It is illegal to,
To
falsely
scare maple syrup.
No. It is illegal to falsely advertise maple syrup. We
Good.
take this very seriously in Canada. The legislation is actually kind of confusing about the status and where it was.
This can't be a criminal. It's a criminal code?
No, it's under the Canada Agricultural Products Act.
Okay, good.
Specifically the maple products regulations under the prohibition section. So I will read
Okay.
you that section.
Oh, good.
Section 3.1. No person shall market a product in import, export, or interprovincial trade in such a manner that is likely to be mistaken for a maple product for which a grade or standard is established under these regulations. basically the keywords is likely to be mistaken for a maple product. So you can't import those or export those.
So Aunt Jemima illegal?
Aunt Jemima's illegal. Fuck that shit. Well, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on the specific language. Like, you wouldn't be able to write maple syrup.
Is it trying to pass itself off
as real maple syrup? Because real maple syrup is not the same thing as corn syrup called maple syrup like they do in America. In Canada, it's very different.
They don't call it maple syrup.
I know. Well, yeah, I think they do. Or do they just call it syrup?
I think it's syrup.
But it's like
syrup.
Sometimes it's maple flavored, so they pass it off as maple syrup. But in America, that would be fine because they don't care about the difference.
You can get maple syrup in America.
I know. I'm just joking. Yeah, in Vermont or some of the northern states, they make maple syrup.
But we take our maple syrup seriously.
Yeah, and I think part of that is also like the price difference. If you had not real maple syrup and were advertising it as real maple syrup and selling it for like $12 a bottle instead of $4, then that's fraud.
Sure. But there should just be regulations about false advertising in general. It's just funny in the Canadian context. It's specifically maple syrup.
But they had to call this out. And I do think this was ultimately consolidated with another law. And it's no longer as specific about maple. But in Ontario, they brought it back up under the Food Safety and Quality Act for produce, honey, and maple products misrepresentation. So this is in Ontario specifically. A person who packs, sells, or advertises honey substitutes or maple product substitutes shall not use words, pictures, or designs on a label or container in any advertisement for the substitute if words, pictures, or designs are likely to lead a person to mistake the substitute for honey or a maple product.
So if I'm selling fake honey, if I'm selling corn syrup, I can't have like a picture of a bee on the bottle.
You can't have a picture of a maple leaf, or like a tap, like those buckets.
Yes.
At the, yeah. So that's in Ontario. And this one I'm positive is still active since 2001.
Good.
I rest my case, Your Honor.
Those were really good, Christina. Thank you for doing your research.
I couldn't not do research. As I was reading them, I was like, this sounds so fucking something's not correct.
Way better than the articles I was finding. You did a good job.
I think this is a lesson in always do your research.
Okay, so let's just end with some rapid fire. I did find an article in Narcity, Ottawa, which is kind of like a blog that has a bunch of cities in Canada have blogs through Narcity, this website. And it specifically has a few strange laws in Ottawa where we live. So I want you to tell me if you knew these things were illegal.
Uh-oh.
Right, one, removing your feet from the pedals while biking is illegal. Agree or disagree?
I mean, I think the act in and of itself is kind of reckless.
Yeah, but people do that in biking down the street. Whee! Stick your legs out. Throw them in jail.
Whenever I hear, well, is it jail time? No.
I don't know.
It's probably like a fine. It's like, make sure you pay your taxes, kid.
It's kind of like there's technically speed limits for bikes as well. And it's very rarely enforced, but occasionally it is. And people are like, what the fuck? Like I was biking along and I got pulled over for speeding.
Like whenever I hear laws like this, like you must keep your pedals on or else, it's because someone didn't keep their feet on the pedals and like someone got fucked up because of it. So someone was forced to make a law because someone was dumb.
Good.
That's what I always think.
Here's another bike one. It's also illegal to bike one-handed, particularly if you have an item in the other hand.
Like your cell phone?
Yeah.
Is it illegal to bike and
apparently
text?
Ottawa really cares about
bikes.
About bikes.
But they do. Explain why. Ottawa's like a bike city.
Are we a bike city?
Yeah, a bicycle city.
There are a lot of bike paths in Ottawa, especially through downtown. Yeah.
There's more than a lot of bike paths. Ottawa is known for like having bike paths everywhere. You can get like across the city of Ottawa. Yeah, there's like nothing like this in Toronto.
Sure.
That was always part of the appeal of Ottawa.
A lot of people who live in Ottawa complain that the city hasn't done a good enough job.
I'm not saying that either. I'm just saying that, like, you know, if you don't live in Canada, you would have no idea about how significant
I hear you.
There
okay,
are
so
a number of like traditional
in Ottawa,
bicycles.
there are bike lanes along some major arteries through the city. Yeah. So along the canal and the
even
parkway.
more than that, there's specific paths through like kind of woods around different neighborhoods that are specifically for bikes. They're bike paths. Whereas I think a lot of people listening to this are like, what? Like people in, I don't know, different places around the world. Yeah. So Ottawa is kind of known for that in Canada. Like Vancouver also has a lot of bike paths. So maybe you're used to that if you live out west. But yeah, that's why there's so many laws related to. What is Minchie looking at?
She just got spooked by
She
something.
saw a crime.
Minchie, is there a crime
Do
happening?
not scare. It's a crime to scare Menchie.
Okay, let's just see how long she stares at it. Okay, here's a famous one that people bring up a lot.
Okay.
It's illegal to eat ice cream on Bank Street on a Sunday.
What? No, it's not. Is Mushu closed?
People bring this up all the time. I don't get it. I can't imagine it's something that's like ever enforced, but I've heard this ever since I was a kid. People
there
laugh about this.
Any explanation? Like, where is that written?
It must be a bylaw because we're talking Ottawa, right? I have no idea why. We could look it up after this, but people have brought this up. I used to hear this as a kid. People would joke about it.
I've never heard this in my life. And I've definitely, I mean, I do not recall committing that offense.
I'm sure I have.
Do never confess.
All right, quick. Just go quick through. I can't have a purple front or garage door in Canada, which is a suburb of Ottawa.
I did hear that. Specifically just purple? Is that what the legislation says? Like, you
I
can't,
think it
can't be
specifies
purple,
purple.
specifically.
So can it be fluorescent pink? Can it be Julian yellow? Can it be what do you pink? Can it be Menchie's nose?
Can it be holographic?
Your car can't.
I can understand if yeah, there's lots of rules on car paint. That's a good point,
Yeah.
which kind of makes sense. I get it because it's like a safety hazard.
Mm-hmm.
But for your garage, if it's like the neighborhood and there's
Like
like,
a homeowners
homeowners
association.
association, usually they would dictate what colors you can paint your garage. Like, you may paint your garage grays, beiges, neutral tones, possibly blue only if navy or whatever. And they usually wouldn't say like you can't do pink or yellow because that list would be too long. You'd think they'd kind of just say what you can do, and that would be easier. But you're saying there's a list that says you can't do purple?
Apparently it's purple.
Just purple. Okay, so everyone in Canada, paint your garages hollow.
Okay, so just two more. It's illegal to have more than 5 pets in your residence at one time, Christine.
In Ottawa?
So I know in certain condo buildings, they have their own sort of bylaws
Yep.
that make this limit even lower.
It was 2 in our condo.
That's true. We could not have gotten another
You could
cat.
not. And there were definitely units that had 3 cats.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything.
How is this really enforced, right?
It's enforced by the condo board. You just get like fined by the condo.
I guess so. 5 is a pretty reasonable number, unless you live in a giant property, I would think, though.
But there are a lot of giant, like more farm-like properties on the outskirts of Ottawa where it's like, why can't I have more than 5?
Yeah, it does sort of say it's in reference to like the safety of the animals is why they generally think 5 is the limit.
It's so dependent on
But it
whether
really
you're in
does
the
depend.
city or what type of building. Because I totally understand that if the point of this is like animal welfare, you want to limit someone's ability to have like 12 cats in a tiny condo or something. But if you're out on a farm, which there are many around Ottawa, like you could totally have more than 5 animals and they all live a happy, healthy life.
Menchie, do you want to live with 4 other animals? Or
Menchie, we can
5?
only get you 3 more brothers and sisters.
All right, and last one. I thought you would like this. It's illegal to lock a child under the age of 5 in a refrigerator.
Are you saying I should know this? I should keep this in mind?
Yeah, I think we should just write it down. Keep a note on the
Wait,
fridge.
to lock or to just put in the fridge momentarily?
To lock a
To lock a
child
child.
under the age of 5 in a refrigerator.
Why?
So as soon as they turn 5, in the fridge.
Yeah, why is it 5? It should be like illegal to lock anyone in the fridge, right?
All right, this is based on some blog. I didn't verify any of this.
You have to verify that, Ben. Like, you can't just say that. Like, what? Wait, so is it if you're 6, you can lock them in the fridge?
Sounds like it.
That's crazy.
No, don't lock anyone in the fridge.
No matter what their age.
Yeah.
Especially not the queen.
Well, that's the only exception.
You're going to alarm her.
I would
going to
lock
jail.
the queen in a freezer.
You would go to jail for 14 years. In 2018.
Okay. I don't know how to end this.
I like the lists that you got. I would have.
Yours is way better.
Well, that's because I did research.
Yes.
But it takes a long time to do research, so I only had those 6 or 7 for you today.
That was good. Now we know.
I feel like we should know all this.
I could be a better law-abiding citizen now.
Mm-hmm. Don't eat ice cream. Don't eat ice cream next Sunday on Bank Street specifically.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's gonna be a an eventful weekend this weekend, Ben.
Why are you going to eat some ice cream on Sunday?
No ice cream, but definitely more of a party to attend. It would be illegal to divulge the specific information about this weekend's event at this date.
Would it be
It
illegal?
would be illegal. I would be prosecuted 10 years in internet jail.
Okay. Okay, but we'll see you at the...
At the indescript event.
Yes.
All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this. Comment down below if there's a fun law where you live that you want to share. Fun, weird, whatever.
Yeah. Thanks so much for watching.
Have a happy Taco Tuesday. See y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.